Today I'm sharing what I'm going to be reading in November. Welcome to Candlewick Library. I'm Cheryl. There are a few readathons happening in November that I want to loosely take part in. Mainly, I had planned on reading a lot of historical fiction in November. And so that is what most of my reading is going to be. Morgan at Morgan's Endless Bookshelf is doing the C.S Lewis readathon, and her co-hosts are Anne at In Search of Wonder and Shannon at Old American Spirit. And it just looked like so much fun. And I love C.S. Lewis and I love Narnia. So I did want to take part in it. They have a bingo board, and I'm going to go through the 9 prompts for that first. Narnia, a middle grade or a fantasy. So with that, I started reading Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire this month. If you watched my last Harry Potter video, you'll have heard that I put it aside. So I am planning on continuing reading that through November for that prompt. Mere Christianity, a Christian nonfiction. I actually have been planning on rereading Mere Christianity this year for my British literature course anyway. It's been so long since I've read this book. And so I am going to be reading Mere Christianity for this prompt. The next one is Space Trilogy, which is a science fiction. And I was thinking that The Orb and the Airship might count for that. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure if it would or not. It seems kind of more steampunk, but I kind of relate steampunk and sci-fi in my mind. So I may or may not. It might be a very loosely based science fiction, or I might just not get to that one. Till We Have Faces, a female main character. So I'm going to get back to that one in a minute. I'm going to be reading a lot of books with female main characters. So I'm not sure which one for sure I will be using for that. Screwtape Letters, a book about spiritual warfare or an epistolary novel. I'm not sure yet what I'm going to be reading for that. The Four Loves, a book by a different member of the Inklings. She did say that she would count Dorothy Sayers, and I'm going to be reading Are Women Human by Dorothy Sayers for my literature course. So I'm going to use that one for that prompt. The Discarded Image, a book that inspired Lewis. The other day I looked at a list of different books that he had listed as inspiring him, and he talked about the Bible. So I think that I'm just going to use my Bible reading for November for that. And then Surprised by Joy, a Christian biography. One of the books I wanted to finish by the end of the year was John Calvin, After Darkness Light. So I'm going to use that. And then The Great Divorce, a book with a stubborn character. And I'm not sure what I'm going to be reading for that yet, but a lot of books here that are going to have a stubborn character. So I will figure out that later. And then there's also the More Montgomery Challenge, and that is the whole month of November as well. It is Lizzie Faye Loves Books, Sonia with an I, and Mitzi Reads and Writes that are putting that on. And it is basically just to read or watch something by Lucy Montgomery. And I wasn't going to do this, just again, because I have other things I wanted to do, but I always feel like I can't not take part when it's Lucy Montgomery. For the group read, they're reading A Tangled Web, and so I may or may not choose to reread that. And then the prompts are Kindred Spirits, Buddy read a book by Lucy Montgomery, and that group read could count for that. Anne with an E, an Anne book or Anne related. Puff sleeves, read a Montgomery book that has a beautiful dress with sleeves on the cover. And I'm actually going to be reading quite a few books that have women in beautiful dresses with puff sleeves on the cover. So I'll probably use one of those for that. I think it maybe was supposed to be a Lucy Montgomery book that has it, but I'm going to use it as it's just a prompt, but it doesn't have to be Lucy Montgomery. Cordelia, a book by another name. So any Montgomery book that's not Anne related. So I don't know how many of those I'm actually going to accomplish because I would want to use Anne books, but I have so many other books this month that I'm planning on reading. But on November 30th, they're doing a live show with trivia and stuff. So I really want to take part in that. So I'm going to try to do at least 1 or 2 of the prompts. And it's been a long time since I've read A Tangled Web. So I will probably read the group read. But again, I don't know for sure. But then the other main one is Historathon, and it's Lena's Bookshelf, Lindsay's Little Library, and Gloria Z. Thompson. And they're doing a group read of The Briar Club. I'm not going to read that. I don't own it, and so I decided not to worry about it. And each of these books should be a historical fiction. So the first one is Historical Era Exploration, out of the normal time period that you read from. For this, I'm going to read For a Lifetime, because it is during like the Salem witch trials, and I don't read about that often. I do read about it sometimes, but not as often as other time periods. And that is book 3 in that series, and I am going to be reading book 2 as well, but I'll get to that in a second. Famous historical figures. There is a famous historical figure as a character in the story. This book is not one of my priorities for the month. So I may or may not get this prompt read. But if I do get to it, I want to read Meet Me in Monaco by Hazel Gaynor and Heather Webb. And this has Grace Kelly in it. Historical romance. And that's obvious. It would be a historical romance. So that is what I'm going to use book 2 in this moment for. I'm very excited to continue on with that series. And then historical mystery, I'm going to be reading Of Gold and Shadows by Michelle Greep. Social issues or cultural perspectives. For this, it might be a stretch, I'm not sure, but I'm going to read A Noble Masquerade. It talks about how she longs to be bold and carefree. And so I think that that brings in the social issues of gender. Historical fiction adaptation, that is to read a book that has been adapted into a film or something like that. I might not read something for that. I might watch a film. I usually watch Little Women in November, and so I might count that. The next one is A Strong Sense of Place, and for that I'm going to use The Bride of Ivy Green, because this has been, and this is by Julie Klassen, because this has been a series I've been reading for a while, and each book takes place in the same little town, in the same little village, and so it has that strong sense of place because you know all the characters already. Historical nonfiction hybrid, so real events, etc. For that, I'm hoping to get to Murder in the Cathedral by T.S. Eliot, and this is telling the story of the martyrdom of Thomas Becket in Canterbury Cathedral, and I need to read that for my literature course. And then War and Conflict, and for that I'm going to read Whispers in the Shadow, and this is part of her Culper Spyring series. I have 3 other books that I would love to get to that are also historical fiction. That is The Circle of Spies, which would be the 3rd book in that series. Christmas at Sugar Plum Manor, which, oh my gosh, I love this cover. I think it's so beautiful. And she's got the beautiful puff sleeves, so maybe. This is one I'm going to be reading with my mom for our Inklings group. And then I also still have A Winter by the Sea by Julie Klassen. If I don't get to this in November, I'm going to hopefully read it in December. But her books are always so big that I love them and I want to read them, but then sometimes it's harder to fit in when I'm reading a bunch of other things. And then there also is nonfiction November. And I wanted to do that as well because I'm always reading nonfiction, but I don't know if I'm going to do 4 nonfictions because they have 4 different prompts, 4 one-word challenges. And the first one is code, and it can be like hidden information or anything like that. And so I'm going to be continuing with reading Chaos. This is about Charles Manson, and I started this a couple of months ago. I didn't get very far into it, and then I had to stop because I was reading other things. And so I'm going to start reading this again. I don't know if I will finish that in November. I probably won't. And then Path, I might use Are Women Human? I don't remember why I wrote that down for Path though. Shot, I'm going to be buddy reading We Were the Lucky Ones with Alma at Alma's Book Journey. And so this, obviously, it takes place during World War II, and there is shooting in it. So, well, there was in the miniseries. I haven't read the book before. So I'm using that. And then Join, I'm going to use Mere Christianity because of joining Christianity. So I'm going to hopefully get all 4 of those read. I don't know if I will finish all 4. That is the goal for the month, is taking part in those 4 challenges, but every single one of them is loosely. I am not going to be as strict as I usually am on myself to make sure I do every single prompt for all of them. But I do have a few books that I've mentioned that are the priority of the month. Obviously, the 2 buddy reads, We Were the Lucky Ones and Christmas at Sugar Plum Manor. Those are the 2 that I absolutely have to read. And then the Spyring books, because my daughter loves these books so much, she wants them back after I read them. And so I told her I was finally going to get to these in November. So those are a priority. And then reading books 2 and 3 in this series. And then book 4 is coming out in November. And so I am really hoping to read 2, 3, and 4 in November. The last 2 that are ones I really, really want to get to are Of Gold and Shadows and A Noble Masquerade. So that is quite a few books. I'm just going to go through those and see how far I can get in those. I honestly don't think I'm going to get past this group plus the one pre-order that's not here yet. I might surprise myself, so we'll see. That is what I'm hoping, and I would love to know if you're reading any of these books this month or what you're looking forward to if you're taking part in any of these readathons.